How did you get into the US Army and then into the business actually?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was actually the Navy. And
Dive into a little bit more of your journey. What was your early childhood like?
Raised kind of lower working class in the Midwest, raised certainly with a very, very strong work ethic.
What are most people doing wrong in the marketing message?
A lot of times we're convinced that in order to do what we truly love, we have to do things that are very uncomfortable.
What would be like the icebreaker moment for people who are listening to this podcast?
So the best analogy I like to share is, let's say that you wanted to be in a position where you were attracting a lot of butterflies.
What is probably one of the big mistakes you have made, which we all can avoid by learning from?
I thought sales was about convincing other people. It was very, very difficult for me.
What's going on? What's going on, everybody who's actually listening to this podcast right now? First of all, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Nikhil Sai Show, which is hosted by me, the Nikhil Sai. And guess what's going on today? We're back with another amazing guest. I mean, this guest is phenomenal. He has done over 2,000 podcasts. Just imagine that. Launched over 200 podcasts, been in 2,500 plus publications. This is insane, like different media appearances. And he scaled his company to 7 figures in annual sales with 0 paid ads. So if you are a high ticket agency owner and you're thinking, oh my God, how can I trust with my potential clients? How can I build better relationships? This podcast will be a game changer. So stay tuned. The guest we're jumping on is none other than Josh Elledge, who is the CEO at Up My Influence. Hey, Josh.
Nick, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. Excited. We will definitely talk about the nitty-gritty stuff of how to build B2B relationships, how to build a better influence, how to do podcasting, all of that good jazz, which we will definitely deep dive into. Before that, Josh, I mean, you were a US veteran previously. I'm stoked to kind of dive into a little bit more of your journey. What was your early childhood like? How did you get into the US Army and then into the business actually? So I would love to understand your backstory and to get more context.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was actually the Navy. And so us Army, Navy
cool.
types always want to be very clear on which branch we served in.
Navy.
But yeah, no, originally.
That sounds more scary to me.
Yeah. So, and in fact, and I'll share just a bit about that in a moment. So, raised kind of lower working class in the Midwest, raised certainly with a very, very strong work ethic. My dad was a hardworking guy and he imparted that on me. And so I ended up joining the military right out of high school.
Wow.
And I became a U.S. Navy journalist. And very specifically, I was a broadcast journalist and I had the unique opportunity. There's a movie in the 80s that you may be familiar with. It's called Good Morning Vietnam. And it's the story of Adrian Cronauer, and Staff Sergeant Cronauer was someone in my life that left an indelible mark on me, because when I joined the Navy, I thought being a journalist was something that sounded fun. I wanted to, very specifically at the time, I wanted to be a DJ. But when he came in, he instilled in me a love of serving audiences. And if you know his story, one thing that he was just a very staunch advocate of is always be honest, always be upfront. Don't ever try to pull the wool over your audience, because your credibility is all you have. And so, good, bad, or ugly, you really should lay your cards down on the table. It is what it is. And, so it's always honest. It's always appropriate to be truthful, right? And if you know his story, he got in some hot water for that, and ultimately history vindicated him. Well, that really, again, impacted my career. And so from there, I went on to actually study family therapy, because I wanted to be a love doctor on the radio and help people, and I wanted to serve in that way. I ended up getting involved in internet development and starting a couple of companies that eventually I started one that did pretty well, and that was Savings Angel, and that did become a 7-figure a year company. And I guess one of our claims to fame is we did that with 0 paid ads. Quite frankly, because at the beginning, Nick, I had no money for advertising, but yet I knew that exposure is everything. You just have to be seen. And I think this is really important today because we're going to be talking about offers. We're going to be talking about what is selling right now in big ticket. We're going to talk about the state of the lead generation space right now because it's really challenging for agency owners, for consultants, for coaches, for B2B service providers that are selling a little bit higher ticket type offers, right? Where the ALV would be north of, say, $10,000 or more, right? So we'll get into that a little bit. But again, it's really important to understand that audiences today have never been more cynical. They've never been more protective of their time. And so if you're dealing with a formula where when we think about where our money comes from, let's think about our offers that we have today. Now, if people have purchased them in the past and, if you have the opportunity, generally you have an okay conversion rate, then there's probably not a whole lot you need to worry about there. If people have bought it before, people continue to buy it when presented with the right opportunity, that's good, right? And as long as you keep your customers, in other words, your service really works, then there's probably not a whole lot of work you need to do there. In terms of like how well you're selling, I mean, sure, there's probably some things we can always do to improve there. But usually what I find is that for most of us, Nick, when let's say that we're in a room, and this is a great way to think about, the state of our offer and how good we are, right? If you had an opportunity where, let's say that you were in a room with 20 of your ideal customers or partners, right? And let's say you had some time to develop a little bit of a meaningful conversational relationship with each of those people, right? It wasn't forced. It was just very natural. How many of those people typically in that kind of environment would you end up doing business with? Now, most people I know and I work with who are good at what they do, a 20 to 30% conversion rate is pretty typical today.
Yeah.
But the challenge is how can we spend time and build a meaningful relationship with 20 of our ideal folks, on a regular basis? And that seems to be the biggest challenge today. We just need more at bats. Now, here's the big challenge. All right. Marketers in general, over the past 5-10 years, have been pretty aggressive in trying to find every available channel to bombard in their words, leads with marketing and advertising messages. They try to be clever. They try to be cute. They try to be, in some ways I would consider to be deceptive. And because of that, there's a really good book by Mark Schaefer called Marketing Rebellion. And Mark talks about the work that I've been doing. I've been studying and leading on consumer behavior for about 20 years now. And, what I've come to find out again is that we're just done with it, right? The fields have been decimated by what I call the lead gen locusts. And because of that, it's unfortunate, but a lot of really great platforms like LinkedIn Sales Navigator and email and a lot of these other outreach methods just don't perform like they used to.
Agreed.
Even advertising has been impacted quite a bit. And so what are we to do? Well, here's the good news. And I'm going to just be very plain on who my ideal audience is. We generally work with very relationship focused based sales, business leaders, coaches, consultants, but they don't mind investing in a relationship first. In other words, they're not just trying to sell at leads. They don't mind getting to know the people that they want to work with. And then they'll explore and see if there's an opportunity. That's typically who we work with. So again, a lot of people that are selling bigger ticket engagements, relationships just going to be very, very critical to that. So that's who we work with. So here's the good news for that audience. If that is you, if I just described, you'd be like, yep, I absolutely love building a relationship first and then do business second. The good news is you're in a great position right now because marketers, or at least cheap marketers, or kind of these spammy amateur marketers, are always going to try to bastardize relationships. And that's good news for people who are a little bit more relationship oriented. So if you'll just simply zig while they're zagging, right, and try to stay in the blue ocean of slowing down, spending more time with fewer people, and you know that works. That's how I built Savings Angel. And for me, it was about building relationships with journalists. I became a syndicated newspaper columnist myself. I've been on TV more than 800 times. All told, over 2,000 media appearances. That's how I built Savings Angel. But I really did, was very thoughtful about who I wanted to collaborate with. And I didn't mind taking days and weeks and months to get to know someone. And very importantly, leading in generosity. And I'll just kind of finish with this because you asked a very simple question, and here I am going on like 5, 6, 7 minutes now with the answer.
No, we love this.
Laying some groundwork here, But again, we're really going to focus on why a go-giver approach works so well today. If you're familiar with the book, The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and John David Mann, it is absolutely what works today. Again, we've worked with hundreds of high ticket agency owners, coaches, and consultants, folks that have been around for a little bit of time. And the go-giver approach works exceptionally well today. And I'm happy to go into as much detail as you want on why that's the case.
We'll definitely talk about that, Josh. That's really interesting turns in your life, from a high school kid joining, US Navy to actually starting your venture and scaling it to $1 million without any advertising spend, only through relationships. And that's fascinating to me. And most people don't get this, but it is possible, and people get this wrong, if I'm not mistaken, which is high ticket sales are purely based on outcome and relationship. And you can likely give the outcome. That's why you're in the business in the first place. But if you don't build the relationship, then you can't really get the business in the first place. And it's so true. So I'm curious, let's talk about, first of all, what's going wrong? What are most people doing wrong in the marketing message?
Yeah, listen, and I don't want anyone to feel bad because I think here's my perception of many business owners, and I'll include myself. We start a company because we really enjoy some aspect of what we do, right? It could be leadership coaching or consulting. It could be organizational management, whatever. It could be SEO. It could be design, branding. And that's what we love. And we want to do that work because it just, we feel that that's why we're here on the earth, right? We're here to make the world a better place. And that's the way that we serve. And then we say, okay, good, I want to do that. How can I do more of that? Well, you have to build more relationships. And so we start looking around and we start going on YouTube and listening to podcasts. And a lot of times there's, we're going to come across a lot of gurus' voices. And those gurus have basically said, listen, if you want to do what you truly love, you're just going to have to play the game. And so you're going to have to use these marketing automation systems, and you're going to have to engage in behavior that many would describe as kind of more of a spray and pray approach, right? Where we're just going to bombard the airwaves with our message. We're going to try to communicate with as many people as humanly possible. And sometimes that message gets quite watered down. And so, and then a lot of times we're convinced that in order to do what we truly love, we have to do things that are very uncomfortable, right? I don't like banging on people's doors, trying to sell them stuff. I don't like shoving business cards in people's hands and then going into a pitch. And similarly, I don't like sending spam. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And then even if I do get an appointment, I don't like being in a position where somehow the relationship dynamic is one where I'm expected to pitch and try to convince them to buy my thing. To me, that just doesn't feel good. Now, again, not everyone's like that. And if you are hearing kind of what I'm talking about and you're like, I don't have a problem with it, that's cool. That's fine. Right. For me, it could be my insecurity. I don't know, but I just don't enjoy that. I don't like being a robo salesperson. To me, my best business comes through relationships, right? So historically, I would get a lot of business through events, but it wasn't necessarily. I've done a lot of speaking. I've spoken, social media marketing world several times, a lot of podcast conferences, podcast movement, Podfest, et cetera. And I've spoken for the Tony Robbins organization, kind of an online, one of his online events through his business mastery audience. But where I ended up getting most of my business through these events was in the speaker lounge. It was in the VIP mixers. It was the quiet conversations in the hallways where, people were just relaxed. We weren't focused on selling. And we were just say, hey, tell me what you do. We just get to know each other. And then, eventually it looks like there might be some opportunities for partnership or collaboration, or, they might hear what my superpowers are and say, wow, I could really use help with that. And historically that was, getting them, with their name in lights in the media, which was kind of my background up until about 5 years ago, when we discovered something a little bit more powerful in terms of business and sales development. But I really enjoy that product. Maybe like you, Nick, it's honoring. I feel so good when someone sends me a warm connection or sends someone to me. That to me feels so validating. I like doing business in what I refer to as a whisper network. It's not flashy. It's not showy. I'm not out there doing TikTok dances to try to drum up business, right? I'm having quiet conversations with other business leaders. And here's one thing I've learned. Business leaders that like each other are going to often work very hard to try to find ways to help one another. That's where you see these really big collaborations and these amazing launches that these leaders do for one another. It's because they liked each other first. It usually wasn't because you got an audience, I got an audience, let's go make a bunch of money. Like that could be part of it, but usually not. I find that most high-level leaders are actually very genuine, good people who just want to do good in the world, and they like doing business with their friends. And I would add myself to that. I love doing business with people that I feel like I have a friendship with.
Yeah, that is so true. And the biggest icebreaker is like most people are so short-term thinking, including myself when I got started in my own business. So nothing wrong with it when you're getting started, but when you're trying to scale, you got to change the perspective, in my opinion. So help us understand, Josh, how can somebody who is probably trying to keep their lights turned on, make their business work out, they're in their first $5,000-$10,000 months, they're getting into tricky situations with their client acquisition, they're desperate about money. How can they go and think about like, oh my God, what's like the aha moment for me to realize that it's relationship first, sales will follow. I just got to have that long-term personality type. And I know for a fact, like it takes me 3 weeks to close a 20K sale, but I have multiple of those conversations lined up where I'm genuinely building relationships and that the consistency comes in. So I'm curious, what would be like the icebreaker moment for people who are listening to this podcast so they could shift their mindsets from short-term to long-term sales cycle where it's more relationship over than just cash?
Yeah. So the best analogy I like to share is, let's say that you wanted to be in a position where you were attracting a lot of butterflies, right? So we'll use this analogy. Now you might say, I need butterflies and I want butterflies today. And so you go search the internet, you go search around, you're like, how can I get butterflies today? And someone says, well, you need the whiz bang, butterfly net 3000, right? So then you buy the butterfly net and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do with it? And they said, sorry, you're going to have to run up and down the street like a maniac swinging that butterfly net around and try to catch butterflies. And so you go out and you run around and you try to do that. And you may or may not be successful, but you look kind of silly, but you do it anyway because that's the necessary evil that you were told that you were supposed to do. Now, a business adult or someone that's willing to play a little bit of the long game. And again, we'll talk about some immediate, like how we can stimulate this, make this happen a little bit faster. But ideally, let's say that, you gave yourself the luxury of a few months to get the momentum going and you wanted to attract a lot of butterflies. What's something else that we could do? Well, very simply, you need to have a butterfly garden. It's as simple as that. If you have an attractive and well-manicured butterfly garden, then what happens? The butterflies come to you. So how do we then attract these ideal connections? And you think about who is in your dream 100, right? And I'm not talking the unicorns. I'm talking about people that just fit your ideal persona. Folks that, if in your industry on a scale from 1 to 10, you're a 4, you're aiming for the 5s and 6s. Okay. Those are very attainable people, right? But you cannot lead with a big net and a crazy look on your face, right? Where you're like, I'm going to get you, butterfly, right? You can't do that because the butterflies are going to be like, get the heck out of here, right? So you have to lead in generosity. Right? If there's one book I inspire you to read after listening to this conversation, please go read The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. Because the idea is that if you lead with what you want and what you need, in other words, if you have desperate sales breath, listen, I've been there. I've done that. I know what that feels like. It's hard. It sucks. But you're going to have to find a way to get your bills paid while you just focus on creating more of an attraction, so butterflies want to come to meet you. So what this looks like is you need to give away what these leaders truly want. Now, not everyone's going to agree with me here, but here's my observation. If you just start DMing white papers or invitations to jump in on a webinar with a bunch of other people, and you're looking for higher ticket type clients, that's really challenging today. I find that it's pretty hard to get people that are very busy and they don't necessarily, they have a lot of things going on, right? They're not super desperate. I find that sometimes if you're selling down market and it's a newer audience and they're just looking for great ideas, sure, I think some of those methods could work okay, but usually not for folks that are doing 6-7 figures and beyond. They usually are pretty savvy. So you're going to have to find out, well, what do they really, really want? And so Nick, this was a challenge that we had faced about 5 years ago as I was getting good business from events. But then if I wasn't speaking at events, I don't know that I wasn't getting a lot of new business. I didn't have a lot of folks, in the pipeline, so to speak. And so, what we did is I said, listen, what do people like me want? Well, it feels good to be validated. It feels good to gain exposure. I'm always looking to make an impact on audiences. And so for me, I was able to, I was a podcaster. I've been podcasting since 2007. I said, well, wait a minute. I'm currently doing about 1 show a week. What would happen if I did more episodes? And I started expanding and I started reaching out. And I said, you know what? I would love to identify people that I would love to work with, and I'm just going to do them a solid. I am absolutely going to lead in generosity. I don't care what the outcome is. I am just going to do nice things for people in the marketplace, and I'm going to see what happens, right? So I'm not going to lead with some kind of, and then I'm going to try and pitch them or sell them. No, you cannot do that, right? Yeah, I'm going to share one more thing, because again, here I am going long-winded on an answer. I hope this is valuable, by the way.
It is.
But this is really important to know. We all, and I'm saying, when I say we, I'm saying sophisticated business leaders that have been around for some time. Matter of fact, I would expand this to nearly all consumers. All know your intention. You're not fooling anybody. So in other words, if your heart is not pure in the sense that your give is not authentic, we all know. And in fact, we know what your intention is before you even open your mouth. Again, this is because most consumers, and most, especially if you're in business for yourself, you've just been bombarded so many times with all these shifty tactics. So we're already a little bit protective. I've got probably 4 to 5 emails that sound like they go to me only one does. And I am ruthless in my one personal email account. Like it's a slash and burn. Like I just don't engage with anyone that cold emails me. And I mark nearly 100% of those people as spam and block them. And it's not their fault. And I feel bad for them, but I just have to be so protective of my time and attention. And Nick, I would argue that most of us are in that boat. We're just very protective of our time and attention. So don't blame what you call leads, which by the way, I think leads is a pretty derogatory term to refer to other human beings. But again, just it's about having more empathy about what people want and need. What do they want most right now? Like in the case of working with journalists and producers, they just want to do a really good job. So what's my job? Is to lead in service and do everything I can to help them do well. And that then led to a lot of meaningful relationships. And then it led to a lot of very successful relationships together. And it did. Some of them took a few months in order to, get engagement. This is just how relationships work. Think about the meaningful relationships you have in your life right now. They usually didn't happen overnight. It took some time for them to get to where they are today. It's the same thing in business.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like the 1 week girlfriend lasts 1 month maximum. Like you got to have that long-term relationship to have a happy marriage. And that's just so true in business as well. I believe the more time you have in your sales cycle to understand the client and make that clear shift before you actually sign up, that just gives you more lifetime value with the client. And, the expectations mismatch won't really happen because you clearly understand each other. If you're just showing all the dreams and you get the client in, then all it happens is you burn and churn them, which is not really a sustainable way in growing a business, overall. Josh, I'm completely aligned with the idea of building, the flower garden so that butterflies can come to it. But I believe, because I actually talk to a lot of agency owners, coaches, high-ticket business owners, B2B services, and everybody has this misconceptions, including a little bit of myself, that, my clients don't watch YouTube. My clients don't listen. They don't care about my PDFs. They don't care about the stuff I put out. So they have all this, including myself, a lot of mental objections about giving value first, assuming that the other person is not willing to take it. They just want the outcome and they want to know the price and they're price sensitive. So I'm curious, how would you change the perspective on what is the best way to create that flower garden? What is the most lucrative playbook you have?
Well, I think you bring up a legitimate concern that there is a lot of content out there. And it's very challenging to get me to want to watch content. Again, I find that if someone is willing to slow down with me, I do business with my friends. And I generally only then do business with people who I feel, no, they really get me. Like I'm not usually looking for the lowest bidder. I'm not usually looking for the lowest price. I want to work with someone that I trust, someone who I feel really has my needs. If they have a service and I'm going to be paying with them, and I hire a lot of people. The idea here is what you want to earn is proximity together. And if all you're doing is just blasting content that is just quite similar to what may be perceived to be everywhere else out there for free, it's going to be hard. Selling e-courses is a lot more challenging today. Now, I see a lot of hybrid type services doing very, very well, but only content alone, it's a little bit more challenging than it used to be. It's not that it doesn't sell. It's just usually it requires a little bit more work. The customer journey might be a little bit longer today in my experience. So the thing that we want to give away, ideally, Nick, would be something that can earn us personal time together. For those of us who aren't going to conferences every single week, I'm not. Zoom is about your best bet today. Can you spend time together on Zoom? Let me share with you an idea. And again, this is a little bit more evidence of why I generally am a fan of this concept. And that is, I think that all of us have an amazing gift. And I think a lot of us may be using it in a way that is kind of undervaluing this. And that is the gift of platform. Platform is something we all have access to. Social media is a platform. A podcast is a platform. YouTube is a platform. Now, a lot of times we use that platform to self-aggrandize. We use it to, hey, look at me, I'm a genius, look at my brilliance. And so we keep using this to pontificate and to share all this, how smart we are. And I think most of us, our intentions are noble and pure, but I think we're missing a huge opportunity, because you could also use your platform to shine the spotlight on other people. And I want you to think about this. What could happen if you did this? I'll give you an example, because, just about how accessible we have. I don't care if you have very few people. Let's say you've got I've got 80 people in my social media following. All right. Are you a member of a community or a group, right, where you could be a contributor to that group? You could give value to that group. Here's a perfect example in a world that I had absolutely nothing to gain, but I think is a good illustration of, just trying to handicap me in a way where, how could I, because I do have a big audience today, and I'm very grateful for that. But here's, so I went to a conference with my wife, and my wife she's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's a licensed sex therapist, and she's very, very good at what she does. And she works with a kind of a unique population. So I went to a conference around that population, and I'm a nobody in that room. Nobody knows me. I am of no consequence to anyone in the room. I'm not speaking. My wife was, but I'm hanging out in support of her. Okay. But I'm just sitting there. Now, I am a member, however, of this old Facebook group with this community, this particular community. And I'm like, hey, it's a good group. We're doing good things. We're helping good people. It's, like I said, not really my tribe, but I'm like, hey, I'm a member of this. And so I checked the rules in the Facebook group. There was permission where I could do a live stream as a member of that community. So I'm like, well, I'm just sitting around doing nothing anyway. So I went over to the meeting organizer. I said, listen, you don't know me. You might know my wife, Jenny, but listen, would you want to do a quick live stream to this Facebook group? And I'd be happy to ask you questions, and you can talk about what's going on here. And she says, absolutely, I would love to do that, right? And so all I did is I typed, put a couple of sentences in there. I hit go live, and then I just held up my phone, and total amateur hour. But I'm like, hey, we're on the ground at this Thrive event, and and I'm here with so and so, and and I forget her name, right? Sarah. I'll just pretend her name is Sarah. Sarah. Tell us what's going on here. And then I just aimed the phone at her, and I let her take it away. And then I said, I'm like, and I see that you've got some vendors here. In my mind, I know the business of events, right? And so you want to take care of your vendors. And she goes, yeah, we do have vendors. And so then we start walking around, and I'm just live streaming the whole time. And there's people engaging. These aren't my audience. They're just people in the group, right? And so we're going around, and then the vendors are like, and they get to talk about what they're doing. And so how much, Nick, this didn't cost me anything to do this, right?
Zero.
Is it that hard? Yeah. No, because she's the one Sarah's the one that's doing all the work. I'm just holding the phone. And so now we then go to 4 to 5 different vendors who we're talking. And I said, well, Sarah, thank you so much for this. Has been great. Any final words? And she does. And then I hit stop. And then afterwards, Nick, what do you imagine happened?
I can expect
all
a
the
bunch
vendors
of people.
and Sarah, what do you imagine their response was to this thing that I did? And it cost me nothing. Took all of 15 minutes of my time. Every single one of them afterwards was like, thank you so much for that. Was so nice of you. Thank you. And Sarah's like, well, tell me what, introduce me to Jenny and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and again, I have nothing to gain from this, but it was something nice that I could do in the moment. And again, if you're a vendor who's plunked down a few $100s to show up at an event, and to you, every bit of exposure just really makes a difference. This is really valuable stuff that we can give. Nick, it feels so good for me as well to let other people know that what you do matters in the world. What you do adds value. What you do, you deserve this emotion of significance. It feels so good to do that. So again, if I could urge folks watching, listening to us right now, think of ways that you can use platform to celebrate others, because what's going to happen is you're going to build meaningful relationships week after week after week after week. And again, it costs you very little to do this. And people, including the right people, will really appreciate you doing this.
I agree, Josh. That was beautiful. I think this is one of the best demonstrations of being a go-giver. How you could actually go give first, and you don't expect anything back. The reciprocity just works out. And I believe reciprocity is 100% real. When you are actually having right intention, like when your why is clear, and when you start with your why, and your why is pure enough to actually genuinely help somebody else, and you're being a go-giver, I don't doubt in the ability of anybody building a successful business. That was beautiful lesson, Josh. Thank you so much for sharing.
I appreciate that. And again, I just want to underline this. This is not a transactional relationship. You're not doing this so you can ask for something in return. That's just transactional. And then the go-giver, Bob talks about that quite a bit. That's what money is for, right? And so here we're giving. And again, this sounds scary for some people. What I'm talking about, I'm just going to give away all my time and I'm not going to get anything in return. Okay, calm down. You will, but you got to be cool about, you can't ask for it. You have to give leaders the space to return. And if you don't ask for anything in return, they'll usually give it to you. It's someone who is generous with me. I am going to ask them. And I see leaders do this all the time. Maybe depending on what kind of marketing conference you go to, if it's a little bro-y, you probably won't get as much of this. But certainly, true leaders who have been around will almost always say, "What can I do for you?" And they genuinely want. And here's what I know: folks that are leaders usually have a lot of things going on. There are oftentimes some things that they can snap their fingers and make the right introduction, and it could be a life changer. Finally, I'll just close with this in this little segment here, is that giving into your industry might make you a little nervous at first. But here's what I found consistently. If you continue to give in your industry, you will get to a point where you will be able to outgive what you receive in return. But you just have to earn your stripes a little bit, and you will absolutely enjoy all the treasures, because again, you've built all of these meaningful relationships. You're just super well liked in the world.
That's a very beautiful wisdom line right there. And I'm grateful that you're sharing some amazing golden value here. One last question before we get into a series of questions we have for the last 10 minutes. But before that, I could see a clear difference in the type of selling you are doing compared to what most B2B agencies actually do. So I would love to know, what do you believe is the key difference in your pitch, especially when you have that conversation of, hey, what do you do? Now, the typical idea is get desperate, show your offer, make a crazy guarantee, charge the least possible, bid against everybody else, and just try to sell your soul, walk their dogs if required to get the deal. That's kind of the typical B2B sales training out there. I'm curious, in relationship approach, what's different, what's working? And I believe smart people who are buying high ticket, they can sense bullshit from miles away. It's okay, I see you, don't talk to me. It's simple as that. So I'm curious, what works the best in relationship selling in a sales call, or when you're actually having that conversation about transacting or making a project live?
Well, look, this right here, this one thing absolutely changed my performance when it came to doing more business more than anything else. My goal, let's say that I have a great conversation. Here's another example. Let's say that you're on a panel and the other panelists, and at an event, right? And the other panelists are like legit leaders that, if you were doing business together, there could be some good stuff happening, right? So let's say you do that act of service together. You get to know each other, and then you lean over to one of them afterwards. You're like, I really like what you had to share. Listen, I would love to chat sometime. I don't know if there's anything we can do together. I don't know if there's any collaboration opportunities. I don't know if I can help in any way or if I've got any introductions, but I'd love to find out, let's grab a Zoom call sometime next week or whatever. Or, if you have time, during the event, grab coffee or whatever. Like, listen, Nick, everybody would say yes to that sort of an invitation. Okay.
Agreed.
And I have no expectation of what would happen in this follow-up conversation. And to have an expectation, I would argue, would be both audacious and inappropriate, because I don't know. It's like, asking someone out because you're going to ask them to marry you or something like that. It's way early in that relationship. It is inappropriate to presuppose someone else's intention. So therefore, we should just be a blank slate, and whatever happens, happens, right? Exactly. I'm here to do good in the world, and I am willing to let the chips fall where they may. And if you will have that kind of business adult mindset, leaders recognize generosity. In fact, here's a good tweet for you right here, a good quote that you could pull out. Generosity is the language that you leaders use to identify one another. Scarcity is the language of the amateur. And so if we are willing to just give, you'll open up the space for reciprocity, but don't ask for it. Just trust that it'll happen. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be intentional about, if you think that there might be some opportunities, go ahead and ask to continue the conversation. Now, in this follow-up conversation, Nick, and this is again, another important delineator, because again, I want business to get done, but I don't know what it is. I'm open to it. I don't care what it is, right? I know that 1 + 1 when we're talking about this high level networking and relationship building, 1 + 1 isn't 2. It's not 3. It's 11, right? When you have leaders that have a lot of things going on, you can do really fun, big things together. Again, give the space so that can happen. But my goal in that follow-up conversation is not to get them to buy my product. Ever. That not at all. If I did have a goal, it would be to evoke in my friend the sentiment of, good, now I have a friend who does what you do. If I had any goal, it would be to evoke that in my friend. Because again, it's like if I had, let's say, I've been so frustrated with SEO agencies in the past, but I had someone who was just they were just a genuinely good person, and their price is within reason of, like, it doesn't even have to be the cheapest thing. It can actually be even more expensive. It's like my neighbor who owned a landscaping company. I said, when we were at a neighborhood thing, and she goes, I said, hey, well, what do you guys do? She goes, we own a landscaping company. I said, wonderful, I'll hire you. And she goes, well, and she said, we're a little bit more expensive than who you're paying right now. I said, I don't care. You're my friend. We all want to do business with our friends. And so, again, with that sort of noble intention, you're going to do plenty of business. You'll do just fine. Don't worry about having hypnotic sales copy and hypnotic, NLP closing tactics or whatever. Like, you don't need, in my opinion, listen, some people would argue otherwise. I don't worry so much about that. I'm just there to be a good person. And, I'd say if there is, I don't mind being the person that, how can I continue this pattern of generosity? What are other things that I could do that could be of service and be of help? And that's probably what I might suggest. I'm like, well, listen, I'd be happy to do this. You don't have to worry about paying me. And again, that sounds scary to some people, but it depends, right, on who you're hanging out with. If you're hanging out with the scarcity-minded amateurs, yeah, it's probably going to be, you're going to end up doing a lot of free work for people that have no intention at all of paying you. But if you're hanging out with legit leaders, like that have been around, I'm not going to let someone give too much to me before I'm going to find some way to compensate them for their generosity.
Agreed, Josh. I think that's a beautiful lesson for sure. And that one thing really clicked overall. Leaders are definitely looking for generous people to relate with and do business. And they could absolutely sense the bullshit. The bullshit is the scarcity mindset, like you said, because somebody who's so scared is always in the flight or fight mode, and they can't really even execute the project when you hand them the project because it's not in their calendar. They're just so focused on putting the food on the table or whatever the situation is, and have that crooked intention, and they can't really build that business. That's pretty sweet. Josh, we have a different line of questions, short and sweet, so if you're excited, we could dive into those.
Yes, please.
Awesome. So I would love to know
answers much faster this time.
No, we love what's happening, Josh. I think it's a brief explanation with actionable and tactical stuff which people could take notes from and actually execute. So guys, if you're tuning into the podcast, don't just let this talk show be some hype for you to build relationship, but like Josh is giving actionable steps on what to do, like building a garden, creating assets, go and build those relationships, do sophisticated connection building, and you could write this down and go execute. And that's what I love about my show, which is having guests who actually share tactical stuff with storytelling, which actually gets into the head instead of just some math problem, which we probably forgot anyway. So I'm excited. Josh, curious on what tools do you use on a daily basis to manage your project and personal productivity and clients?
Boy, I'll tell you, people, I know where my zone of genius is, and I know what I'm not really awesome at. Now, that said, answer your question. So first cop-out answer is I have a really good COO. She's incredible. I have great managers. I hire specifically to fill in the gaps because I know the things I don't enjoy. And so I'm very, very keen on hiring people and good people. And I'm not willing, I'm willing to make larger investments in the right people because I know long-term it makes life a lot easier. At the beginning, yes, you're going to have to come up with as economical ways of doing this as possible. Now, that said, I wish we had more time to go into this. I use ChatGPT probably about an hour a day at a minimum.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's for a lot of deep thinking type stuff. It's for strategy, copy. I'm really careful when it comes to copy generation, because ChatGPT has a very kind of AI sound to it, but for strategy and planning and deep thought and problem solving, I use a lot of AI.
Curious, like if you could sum it up in a nutshell, like I've seen people giving away like simple tactical stuff, doing some calculations or doing some research and putting a PDF together, but you're using it for like actual strategy. So that's interesting to me. I'm kind of curious. I would love to lean in a little bit if you could expand it for a minute.
Yeah. Well, think of it like, let's say you had like the most brilliant coach in the universe. And that's the persona that I give ChatGPT. And I said, listen, we're going to go through and here's the things that I really, and it's not that ChatGPT is going to give me the answers, but ChatGPT is going to help me. It's going to evoke the answers in me, right? It's like therapy, right?
The answers are within.
Usually a good therapist is not going to tell you what to do. The therapist is going to guide you and you're going to come up with the answers. Now, this is helpful if you already have, like if you've already been around a little bit, you have a good head on your shoulders when it comes to business strategy and what works. Sometimes, the initial answers that I get from ChatGPT, I'll push back on that. Are you sure about that? Because here's my concern and consideration. And I really try to engage in a back and forth. I don't just accept what's given to me and take it. Now, similarly with working out copy, I don't, first off, I train it on my voice really aggressively. And I have a lot of pre-prompts and, a lot of stuff that I kind of fill it up with. But even then, I honestly, I'd say it's probably 70% of the way there. Like if it's something that is going to potentially be my voice to my audience, it's going to go through a lot of my editing because I'm very careful about that and I'm not perfect. But we use it a lot internally. But I'm, again, very, very careful. So to other leaders out there, even if you're delegating this to your team and you know they're just using AI tools to represent you, can I just urge you to please be very careful about that? Because when I read copy and it's very clearly coming from AI, it's a pretty big net negative. I'm going to tune out. Yeah, it's a big concern I have. But again, for strategy planning and therapy, basically type of stuff, where the answer I know is within here, I just need to get beyond the blinking cursor, right? And the blank page. I just need to get stuff out there and start mind mapping and exploring. Dear God, we are living in an amazing time right now with what we have access to right now. So please don't undervalue what you can do, but also, again, be very careful about the execution of that in making sure that ultimately this is your voice and your thought.
Yeah, I love that, Josh. And I'm glad that you're using it in all parts of business. People who don't take advantage of it are going to be left out. So, I hope everybody actually takes advantage of it. Josh, do you have like a few more minutes? I have like a couple questions for us to
I'm
finish
good.
up.
This is my last appointment of the day.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for confirming. So Josh, would you mind walking us through your typical day? How would that look like?
Yeah, well, listen, if it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm pretty booked out. I generally have very, very busy schedules because I do a daily podcast. So every single week, I'm interviewing 6 to 10 high level leaders, and it's 30 minutes. I'm in and out. Okay, we work our system. It is, if you just come find me, go to my website, myinfluence.com. If nothing else, just to see how we communicate and some of how our systems work, because we have obsessed on these systems. Now, specifically on our podcast. Now, I'm always looking for great guests. So, if there's someone listening and you're a business leader, click on podcast and you'll see that we're always looking for great guests. The way that we've set it up is, sure, I've got some really good team members who do the heavy lifting, but the way I've designed it, I'm the talent. I come in, I hit my mark, I'm in and out. I do a daily show and sometimes people are like, how do you have the time to do it? I'm like, okay, if I do 7 episodes a week on average, that's 3.5 hours out of a 30-hour work week. All right. What am I still have nearly 90% of my work week open to
15%. Yeah, it's 50% of the time. That's it.
So I got people that handle the front end. I got people that handle the back end. Now, every single one of my guests, I'm going to lean over and say, listen, I really like what you had to share. Why don't we chat and see if there's something we should be doing together? I don't, whatever it looks like, I'm happy to be of help. Maybe I've got some introductions. I know some good people, happy to be of service, however that looks. So then I end up doing follow-up calls with all those people. So there's the other 3.5 hours or 4 hours or whatever out of the week, probably a couple of additional follow-up calls. Other than that, again, I am really mindful of staying in my lane. If I'm ever not in my zone of genius, there's usually a little nagging voice in the back of my head saying, you should probably give that to Elisa or Gite or Kimberly or Angelique or one of my other team members to do. And again, I know I'm speaking from a place of luxury. It's taken a lot of time to build up the team and the client base that we have right now. It wasn't like that in the beginning, but certainly I think it's a wonderful and noble goal to invite other people to join you in your journey so that you can narrow your focus so that you're only doing what only you can do. I'm a big fan of the E-Myth. So my number one job as a business leader is high-level networking. That's the most important thing I should be doing in my business. Everything else should be delegated. Excuse me. Strategy and high-level networking. Other than that, I got people for that. And again, hopefully that's an aspiration for many of us to get to that position.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I constantly hear from a lot of business owners that saying, oh, I'm burning out. I'm like, it's obvious you'll burn out when you do things which you don't like. So find your zone of genius. Yeah.
That is absolutely it. When I'm doing things like, customer service, for example, I've got really good people that are so much better than me. But if I do customer service, Nick, it's going to burn me out. I'm
in an
just,
hour.
I'm
Yeah.
not,
In
I'm
30
not
minutes, you're
wired
done.
for that side, the operational side of it. I'm more of the idea person. Like,
I
and
love that.
so if I'm only doing that, I could work 60 hours a week because doing this, I love this. I love serving audiences. And by the way, I am okay. There may be people listening and they say, cool, that was great. I'm never going to find Josh. Not that it was good, but not that good. Like, I'm okay. Like, if I shared a book reference and that was my only impact to our listener today, a particular listener, I'm okay with that. But I know that usually there's people who are like, I'm an acquired taste. And then, there's usually some people that they're interested, they're curious, and they might Google search me, or they might go to my website and there, I've got a lot of resources for, we give away. And by the way, like, if you want to deep dive on this stuff, you can watch, like, I don't even require an opt-in. You can watch my full, what's called like our attraction mastery workshop. I don't need your email address. You're an adult. If you like it, you know how to get a hold of me. That kind of stuff is, to me, is silly. So I genuinely like treating other business leaders as adults like I would want to be treated. And then we end up doing more business that way because people appreciate that level of trust.
The sincerity just works and the reciprocity kicks in without a doubt. That's pretty cool, Josh. Josh, if you could go back and talk to 20-year-old yourself and give yourself a few suggestions, what would that look like?
Man, I'll tell you, that was a tough part of my life. I'll be very honest with you because, my parents were just not in a position to help with college at all. I didn't really have good grades in high school. So there was, not a lot of potential for me. So I joined the military. I was pretty limited on that. So I'll tell you, I don't think that I would say many words. I would probably just give 20-year-old Josh a hug and say, it's going to be okay, because you've got a good heart. Your intentions are genuinely good. You like people. It's going to work out okay for you. Just keep moving forward. By the time you hit 23, you're going to meet an amazing young lady. You're going to fall in love. You're going to get engaged in 21 days, and then you're going to get married a year later. We had a long engagement. But
okay.
She's the woman I've been married to now for 28 years, and I'm really grateful. So I would say, sure, go ahead and date these other losers, but eventually, I shouldn't say that. But yeah, eventually you're going to find someone it's going to be a good companion. If there's anything, I would say when you hit 23, make sure you go to this luau and make sure you talk to this pretty brunette with the curly hair. And don't let her get away. And I didn't. So, yeah.
Congratulations. So happy for your 28 years of marriage.
It's gone by quick, man.
It's gone by quick. I mean, great relationships feels that way for sure. Only the troublemaking ones, sounds like hell every day. So I'm grateful to know that you actually are having an amazing life. So I would love to know, what do you consider are like your life's biggest achievements so far, and what are your next bigger goals?
Well, listen, I'd say my kids are doing pretty well. I'm proud of them. I've got 3 kids. Again, I'm grateful for my relationship I have with my wife. I feel like I feel today, I would say, if you're asking me specifically about business, I would say the fact that I probably have a couple of thousand people that I genuinely have a good relationship. Like, if I reached out to them, they would say, gosh, right? And so I've played the long game on that. I invest into great relationships. I collaborate. I do good things for good people. I don't burn bridges. I don't ask out of the gate. I don't do jab, jab, right hook kind of stuff. It's pretty much just, I don't know. Like I don't right hook. I wouldn't even consider myself jabbing. I'm just out there doing good stuff. And because of that, listen, I want to give hope to someone who's earlier stage in their business. It gets easier as you go. The more relationships you build, the more people you get to know, the more help you've got, the more people that have got your back. As long as you keep showing up in a generous way, you always have a friend that you can then go back to and say, hey, can I get your opinion on something? Can I get your help on something? Can I get your advice on something? And usually people that you've invested into are more than happy to help out if they can. In business professionally, I would absolutely say, it's the people. It's absolutely the people that they'll send business from time to time. I appreciate that, but honestly, it's the warm relationships. If you haven't guessed, I'm kind of a little bit of a higher empath personality, so genuine relationships really matter a lot to me.
Love that. I think this is very good, wake up call for people who are just in that turn and burn mode. And I'm glad, you're speaking the truth about building relationships to stay longer in the game. Josh, I would love to know, what is probably one of the big mistakes you have made, which we all can avoid by learning from you?
Gosh, well, early on in one of my failed businesses, I was afraid of sales because I had read the only material, I didn't know anything about quote unquote sales. And so I just read books from people like Tom Hopkins and, whatever sales books were out there at the time. And Nick, it scared me to death. It really did, because and again, I was probably a little too afraid of rejection and stuff like that. But because I thought sales was about convincing other people, it was very, very difficult for me, and I just didn't do it very well. And so I had to come to that understanding. No, sales is not that at all. It's about, your ability to bring more and more and more value to the world. And if you just lead in that manner without hitting people over the head, you'll end up doing a lot of business. But again, it's like the realtor that spends a lot of time building meaningful relationships in her or his community. Well, you get to a point where, if you've got 200 people in your local community that when asked who's a local realtor that you would recommend, especially with social media today, it's game, set, match for you.
Yeah.
You're set for life. You don't have to do ads on buses or whatever. You pretty much can just rely on being a good person in your community, and people will send business. I think if you're a member of like a neighborhood or a community Facebook group, you genuinely see, who knows a good landscaper? Who needs a good plumber? And there's usually those people that get called out a lot. That's kind of who you want to be. You want to get called out a lot as that top of mind. You know what? Josh is pretty good when it comes to helping out with B2B sales and, and in trying to come up with better solutions to lead generation. I hope I'm that person. I get tagged a lot of like podcast kind of questions and stuff too. And I'm always happy to help.
Love that. That's so interesting. Josh, what inspires you? What excites you? Why do you wake up excited from bed to get to work?
Well, again, it's meeting new people. I know I come across as a fairly extroverted, but truth be told, I do thrive on, again, quiet one-on-one relationships, just doing something for somebody where afterwards they say, thank you so much for that. Like it feels good. That's exciting. So I'll look at my schedule and I say, this is great. I've got 3 interviews today with 3 amazing leaders. I've looked at their website. I'm like, wow, they're really smart. I hope I can learn some things from them. And maybe there's some ways that I can provide them. Well, I know that I'm going to provide them immediate value, but then, just the curiosity of like, well, what else, could we possibly do together? And I'm open to collaborations, partnerships, anything, because again, I love that 1 + 1 = 11 dynamic.
Yeah, I completely believe in that, especially in B2B. Like that's so true. When you're not dealing with B2C customers and you're only dealing with B2B, relationships is everything. I mean, imagine like how, like Nike and Michael Jordan partnership turned out. It's a very good example of 1 + 1 = 11. It's exciting.
Yeah, that was a good example of a B2B to C relationship. So even all of us who are B2C, what I'm sharing with you, listen, you probably still have a Dream 100. And so therefore we're all kind of if you're in business, you're B2B in some way, right? Even if your primary audience is C,
customers,
the Bs will help you get to way more Cs because chances are they've already pre-congregated a lot of your potential Cs out there. I
Yeah.
love like I said, I love the behind the scenes quiet conversations because those collaborations just make life so much easier. Like with Savings
Agreed.
Angel, we paid out over $1 million in commissions to partners because, it was just easier to, pay my friends and have them, partner with me in a way that was super win-win.
Yeah, you can't go wrong when you have enough partners referring you. Like
Yeah.
unless you're sharing your payment gateway to collect cash, you can't really go wrong. That was really helpful, Josh. Really, really stoked. Thank you so much for the value you're giving here. And how can our audience connect with you if they want some help? If they want some help in building a better business, doing better lead generation in
Yeah.
B2B?
Yeah. Well, listen, as I mentioned, two things. I'm always looking for great podcast guests. If you're in the B2B world, say you're a coach, consultant, or agency owner, I've done over 2,000 episodes for my own podcast, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. I mean, as long as you're
Yeah.
doing six figures, yeah, I've been at it for a while. But as long as you're doing six figures in business or beyond, listen, we'd love to have you. So again, what you do is here's how you get there, right? So you can, because we'll just have you fill out a guest application and my team will take really good care of you. But you just go to this website. It is www.upmyinfluence.com. upmyinfluence.com. Click on podcast and you'll see a little button that says, yep, we're looking for guests. And then you can go there. Now that's number one. If you're not quite at that level or you're curious about some of the concepts I've talked about, I haven't shared a lot of like sourced data. Like I have a lot of the data that backs this up. So if you're interested in the research on a lot of these concepts, you can watch, I've got a longer form. It's called my Attraction Mastery Workshop. I don't need your email address. I don't need it. You're cool. Like you can watch this. And again, it's that same website, upmyinfluence.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a button where it allows you to watch the Attraction Mastery Workshop. It's free. I don't need your email. You don't have to opt in for anything. Just watch and learn. I guarantee you're going to learn a few ideas, especially if lead gen, that term is something that's concerned you. I'm going to share a lot of data about the status of the lead gen space right now. I work with a lot of very, very good VPs of sales for successful companies. And so a lot of what I'm sharing has been shared with me, from a lot of these great leaders out there. The world has changed quite a bit in that world. So I hope to inspire you with some great ideas. And yeah, certainly if you want, if there's opportunity for us, listen, I give, we have if you're curious about what I sell, right? Our platform starts at $4.97 a month and I can help fill your schedule for the rest of your life. It's a pretty simple process. It's the make friends button, all the way up to higher ticket engagements too. But quite honestly, I think most people don't need that. I'm happy to help however that looks. Nick, thank you so much, man. It's been a great pleasure being here and being able to help some good folks.
Absolutely, Josh. That was definitely transformational. And you have given away a lot of value. And you really walked the talk, which you just shared about, which is, being a go-giver first, before you ask for it. And you're not even asking for it, you just get it. That's what I love about, the approach you have, Josh. Any last words for us to conclude the whole show?
Yeah, well, buy this book right now. If you haven't read The Go-Giver, go read The Go-Giver. That's, a hat tip to my friend Bob Berg, who has just completely transformed my life. But that is it. Certainly also to someone who has spent this long listening to this presentation, you're still with us right now. You are a special person. Not everyone does what you do. So to you that has stuck around this long, I want to assure you, you were in the right room. You're doing the right activity right now. You are learning from people who have been there, done that. It's much more painful and it takes far longer to learn a lot of these things by yourself, right? It's, people that get their nose bloodied for years and years and years because they just keep trying new tactics. It's far better to spend that time and work on yourself. It's, when I was talking about ChatGPT, it's mostly about strategies, mostly about personal development. It's mostly about solving big problems and big ideas and big thoughts and mind mapping and that sort of thing. So again, I want to celebrate our friend that's been listening this long. you're doing the right activity. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, myself included. And everything I'm repeating, everything I'm sharing is something that I've learned from someone else. So I just want to commend our friend that's been listening. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep learning from masters, and you truly will start to get the same sorts of results that they have gotten just simply by applying modeling knowledge. Nick, again, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. That was a great closing. I would definitely agree with what you said. I genuinely believe learning from other people's mistakes is probably the easiest way to avoid a lot of mistakes and don't get punched in the face a couple million times while you're trying to make your business work out. And luckily, I was able to start my show and learn from hundreds of millionaires to become one of them in the process. So it's this podcast is literally like a documented proof that anybody can learn the information and execute. And like again, one quiet advice I would really want everybody to do is don't let this podcast be a motivational talk show in your journey. Like Josh has given so many actionable steps. If you didn't understand, go back, re-listen, take notes. He has given very actionable steps. Please go execute after finishing this podcast. Just do 5 things. Don't create a 50-page to-do list and never touching it. Don't do that. Don't just dump in a document which you won't probably open again. Just write down 5 things you're going to do from this podcast and like do it. Commit to do this end of the week. And that way you could actually get an outcome from this podcast, not just motivation. And Josh, thank you so much for being an amazing guest. Thank you so much for opening up a lot of eyes for B2B businesses that yes, relationship actually works. Yes, giving away actually works. Yes, being genuine actually pays off in a longer run. And yes, you need to think in long term to make a business successful. And that scarcity mindset will only keep you out of business. The more you think about it, the far you're going to get out of business very quickly. So I'm stoked for you. Thank you so much, Josh. Once again, appreciate your time today. And guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'll be back with another amazing guest, just like Josh, on this The Nikhil Sai Show. Share this with your friends who are in the B2B space, agency, coaches, and whatnot. And if you need some help, go check out upmyinfluence.com to get some help from Josh and his team. Looks like they have pretty dialed in systems. So thank you so much, Josh. And thank you for listening, everybody. Appreciate your time. Josh.